Morning, church. Morning. And a good morning it is. The sun is out. We are in the pews. We're at church. We got our coffee in our hands. The Astros are leading the American League West. It has been a great week for Houston and for First Colony. If you don't know who I am, let me reintroduce myself. My name is Ben. I've gotten to serve this church as the summer preaching intern. And let me just say, thank you. You may have seen me up here and you may have seen me in class somewhere, but from the bottom of my heart, this is my last Sunday here at the church. From the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. I know listening to a 20-year-old can be rough at times. And so thank you for the humility, for the patience to get through a couple of sermons and lessons. And I also speak for all the interns. It's been an unbelievable summer. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you, church, for the love that you've shown me and the other interns. We're continuing our sermon series in Who Else? And I want to start off with a story of a man named Truett Cathy. Now, some of you may recognize that name, some of you may not, but I guarantee you that all of us can recognize his creation because Truett Cathy is the founder and creator of the beloved fast food chain Chick-fil-A. In 1946, he opened the first ever restaurant in Georgia, which would then grow into hundreds and thousands of Chick-fil-A's across America, and Chick-fil-A is now expanding overseas. But when he first opened the restaurant, he made a pretty unorthodox decision. When he first opened the restaurant, he decided that he and his company would take Sundays off. He wanted to give the Lord back his day. He wanted to take the Sabbath. And then also in the back of his mind, he wanted to give his employees the chance to worship and take the Sabbath if they wish. Now, this decision has been criticized by millions because let's be real. We want Chick-fil-A on Sundays, right? Like, has this ever happened to you where you're like, you get home from church and you're thinking of, or like it's later in the day on Sunday and you're thinking about what you're going to eat for lunch or dinner, and then all of a sudden Chick-fil-A comes to your mind and you start craving it on Sundays. And I've literally done this where I start driving to Chick-fil-A on a Sunday, and then halfway through my drive, I remember Sunday, right? And like in that moment, like, man, Chick-fil-A, I know what you're doing is a good thing, but man, I wish you were open on Sundays. Like, I admit it. I'm ashamed to say it, man enough to admit it. I don't know if you realize this, but Chick-fil-A loses an insane amount of money every single year. They take 14% of the year off by taking Sundays off. And every year, Chick-fil-A loses, on average, $1.2 billion in revenue every single year. The world and all of us would tell Chick-fil-A to open on Sundays because not only do we want that number 3 12-count large size with a sweet tea on Sundays, but it also makes sense. Like, they would make so much more money. They are doing exactly the opposite of what the world will tell them they need to do in order to be successful, and they're dominating. And what's incredible, and I think when we think about it is not surprising, is they have consistently been rated the number 1 fast food chain in America. They have been rated number 1 in 11 out of the past 12 years. And they're taking a day off. Like, they're giving everyone else an extra day to catch up on Sundays, and they're dominating. They are the number 1 fast food chain in America, and they give Sundays to the Lord. Personally, I don't think that's a coincidence. Chick-fil-A each week sacrifices something to the Lord, and then we're surprised to see God work miracles through that. Each week they give a day to the Lord to worship, and we're surprised to see that God is doing what on paper should not happen. I think we can learn something from Chick-fil-A. And their story reminds me of another famous story in the Bible, the feeding of the 5,000. So at this point, I want to ask everyone to turn your Bibles or fire up that YouVersion Bible up to John 6, verses 1 through 12. I'm going to be reading through this if you would like to follow along. I'm reading from the NIV, and the Word of God says this, John 6, verse 1. Sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in his mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for everyone to have a bite." Another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are left over, let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. One thing that's really interesting about this story is that this is the only miracle that is found in all 4 Gospels. This story is the only miracle that is found in all 4 of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And what's also incredible is each story adds a little detail. They don't contradict each other, but they add a little bit different of detail than the other story. For instance, in Matthew's version of the story, it adds a piece of detail that makes this miracle even more incredible and grand. It says in Matthew 14, verse 21, the number of those who ate was about 5,000 besides women and children. 5,000 men besides their wives and their children. Jesus did not just do this miracle for only 5,000 people. Many scholars believe that there were more than 20,000 people in attendance that day that Jesus had to feed. 20,000 people that day. And he fed them all because a little boy had the courage to bring him his 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish. This boy had the courage to give Jesus all that he had. And that act of faith sparked Jesus to do a miracle. And this goes into my first point. Point number 1, God can turn whatever little you have left into a miracle for yourself. What this story shows us about the power of having faith is that if you bring him whatever little you have left to offer, he can work miracles through that. The little boy in the story, he and his family, they had 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish. That's not a lot of food. I don't even know if that'd be a lot of food for me. And when they heard that Jesus needed it, they sacrificed everything for him. They didn't have much to offer, and I can imagine being in their shoes. They stand up in the middle of this crowd, and they look around. It's a lot of people. Jesus is asking for my food. He's going to feed everyone around me with my little food. Jesus can use the little I have for significant things. Jesus can use my insignificant for significant things. Yes, he does that. He does do that. Hear me. Jesus can use your insignificant for significant things. Jesus can use your little for big things. And that's just how great our God is. There are people in this sanctuary right now where you might not have much to give God right now. Like you're down to 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish. And Jesus may be asking you to give all of that to him. And your faith may be little right now, but Jesus is just asking you to give whatever little faith you have left to him. Because when did Jesus stop being the God that could feed 20,000 people with 5 pieces of bread? Someone in here needs to hear this. If Jesus fed 20,000 plus stadiums worth of people with 5 pieces of bread, then what makes you think he can't take whatever little you have in your life and do something incredible with that too? When did we start believing when from 2,000 years ago to now, did we stop believing that God was the type of God that does these miracles anymore? When did we start believing that Jesus was the kind of God that would do this 2,000 years ago, but he's not going to do that today? Of course he can do that for you today. I don't know what obstacle is in your way. Maybe it's not 20,000 people that you have to feed right now, but whatever it is, it may seem something impossible. Well, let me instill this into you. Jesus does the impossible, right? He can use 5 pieces of bread to feed 20,000 plus he can mend that relationship. If he can feed 20,000 with 5 pieces of bread, he can mend that relationship. He can provide that healing to that person you're asking healing for. Like he can give you the courage to reach out to that person. He can give you the courage to stop doing that addiction. And one thing this story teaches us is that sometimes all Jesus is looking for before he does these miracles is an act of faith. So maybe all that is holding you back from seeing a miracle is an act of faith. Even when it seems impossible, Jesus can satisfy you using whatever little you have. And you may be in a similar boat to the boy and his family. You may be thinking, well, I don't have much to give. My faith is running dry. I doubt. I don't have a lot financially. I don't have the courage to forgive that person. I don't have the courage to call that person out. I don't have the courage to start taking the steps to stop that addiction. And I don't think Jesus... Hear me when I say this is important. I don't think Jesus is necessarily asking you to give a lot, but I think he's just asking you to give all that you have, right? Like that boy didn't come with his 5 pieces of bread, and Jesus was not like, great, now go find me 19,995 more pieces, right? I personally think Jesus could have done this miracle with only 1 piece of bread. And this story, it also reminds me of Mark 12. It tells the story of this woman, and it says, in Mark 12, verse 41, it says, Jesus sat down opposite of the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money in the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, truly, I tell you, the poor widow has put more into the treasury than all others. They all gave out their wealth, but she, out of poverty, gave everything she had. So maybe you don't have much to give. Maybe you're down, and whatever this means for you, maybe you're down to 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish. There's not a whole lot of food in your basket. I don't think Jesus is asking you to give him a lot. I think he's just asking you to give him all that you have left to give. Because Jesus, I'm assuming you didn't just steal the bread from that boy. You didn't just see that basket and just snatch it, right? He probably asked when Andrew brought this boy to him, he probably asked hey, can I use that? Can I use that? Because I want to do something pretty cool with what you have. And that may be what he's asking you right now. Hey, I know you think you don't have much. But to me, if you give it, I can do something pretty cool with that. One of the great parts about our God is when we give him our all, it not only affects ourselves, but it also affects our church, our community, and all of those around us. And this goes into my next point. Point number 2, God can turn whatever little you have left into a miracle, not just for yourself, but for others as well. I think oftentimes when we start thinking about God doing miracles in our lives, we get so caught up in how it affects us, how it changes our lives. But we forget that our God is not only doing miracles to supply for us, but he's also doing miracles to supply for all those around us. And this parable is a perfect example of that. I want to read from the text again, if you would follow me, starting in John 6, verse 8. Word of God says this: another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here's a boy with small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, have the people sit down. There's plenty of grass in that place. And they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. Jesus didn't just do a miracle for this boy to see. He didn't just do a miracle for his disciples to see. He did a miracle using that little boy's faith for a stadium's worth of people in attendance that day. And all that he needed to do this miracle, or he didn't need it, but all he wanted to see that could spark him to do this miracle was that act of faith from that boy to give him all that he had. And so I don't know what that looks like in your own life. I don't know what left you have to give God. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's not. Not everything is about money. Maybe God is asking you to give your job up as a sacrifice for him. You've been working 80 hours weeks and you haven't been taking the Sabbath. Maybe he's asking you to stop working. Maybe God, like he did Chick-fil-A, maybe God is telling you to take that job that doesn't pay as well. It makes no sense on paper, but there may be someone in that office that you're going to take that job for that needs to hear the gospel, and that's why he wants you to do it, and you can't see it yet. Maybe he's telling you to give up your marriage to him or any relationship and just offer these things up as sacrifice to him. Like, I don't know what your 5 pieces of bread looks like. You do. I don't. But if you give it to him, not only do I think he can work a miracle in your life, I think it will affect everyone around you. When Chick-fil-A gave Sundays back to the Lord, I'm sure in the front of their head, they were thinking that they were honoring God by not working on Sundays. But I'm sure that they had no idea the effect it would have for its employees, the fact that it would give millions of employees across America who work at Chick-fil-A the opportunity to go to church on Sundays. Like, I'm sure there are employees for Chick-fil-A who've gotten that opportunity and then got saved from it. Like, that probably had its blessings. When that little boy came to Jesus, he probably was just hoping to get enough food for a couple of people, for those around him. He probably didn't realize that by giving Jesus all he had, that he would be feeding everyone there. He'd be feeding 20,000 plus people. And if this doesn't encourage you to throw like everything you can at the feet of Jesus, every burden, every sin, every weight, then like, I don't know what I can say that will. Not only will placing everything you can at the feet of Jesus be beneficial for your life, it'll be beneficial for everyone around you. Like, God wants to use you not only just to do miracles or remarkable things in your life, but in other people's life as well. He wants to use you just as he used that boy. Out of everyone there, I guarantee you, no one thought that boy was going to be the answer to feeding everyone. Like, this little insignificant boy had the answer to feed everyone. And then here's another thought. Was that boy the only one with food that day? 20,000 people and that boy was the only one? Probably not. There's probably other families. There's probably other men and women with food that day. But that boy was the only one that had the faith to give Jesus everything he had. He wants to use you to do miracles in other people's life. He wants to use you just as he used the disciples to feed everyone. In Matthew's telling of the story, it says that Jesus handed the fish and the bread to the disciples so that they could pass out to everyone. And I think it's really interesting that Jesus purposefully uses the disciples. Like, in my opinion, I think he probably could have snapped his fingers and then food would have been in front of everyone, right? But he purposefully handed out this fish and this bread to the disciples so that they could pass it to every person. And like, out of everyone he could have chose to do this, he chose the disciples who doubted him at first. Like Andrew, when he brought the boy, was like, I don't really know how we're going to do this. Like, he only has 5 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of fish. The greatest Christians of all time couldn't see the miracle that Jesus was going to do. They doubted. They wanted to send people away. But God still used them anyway. God can use the ones who doubt to perform miracles. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if this doesn't tell you to throw everything you can at the feet of Christ, I don't know what I can say that will. And again, I don't know what your 5 pieces of bread looks like. I don't know how empty or full your basket is. Maybe it's God telling you to switch jobs to that job that doesn't pay as well. And you may think that's dumb, but again, there may be someone there that needs to hear the God, like, you can't see the full picture. And God is going to perform a miracle in their life through you. Maybe your 5 pieces of bread is God asking you to give up something. Maybe he's asking you to give up that addiction. Maybe it's not even just that. Maybe he's asking you to give up anxiety. Maybe he's asking you to give up stress and fear and overthinking. He's asking you to throw all of these things at his feet. And to sum these 2 points up, again, I don't know when in history we stopped believing that God was the type of God that could do miracles in our lives. Because the same God we are singing songs of praise to right now is the same God that fed 20,000 people with 5 pieces of bread. It's the same God that split the Red Sea that allowed the Israelites to walk through. It's the same God that gave little David the courage to slay 9-foot Goliath. It's the same God that raised Lazarus from the grave. It's the same God who died and they couldn't find his body 3 days later because he rose. Like, it's the same God who does miracles. When did we start believing that he doesn't do these things anymore? When did we stop asking him to do these things anymore? I don't know what miracle you need in your life right now, but all it took Jesus to do this miracle in this story was for him to see someone have the faith to give him everything they had. And so if you're looking for a miracle, I want to ask you a question. If you are currently looking for a miracle, if you're currently looking for a move of God, what can you give up? What can you sacrifice? What can you place at his feet? I'm a huge hymns guy. I just always have been. I grew up Church of Christ. I love hymns. And one of my favorite hymns of all time is this hymn called What a Friend We Have in Jesus. And one of the verses in that hymn really speaks, I think, to this story. It says this: "Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer." Man, what pointless pain we carry with ourselves, all because we're not giving it up to God in prayer. What needless pain we are bearing, all because we're not giving it up to God. Sometimes all it takes for God to do a miracle in your life is for you to hand over the situation to him, for you to give up control to him. And let me say this, I can say all of these things, and it can be super easy to hear. If I have excellent faith, I believe, I give everything to him, then my life is going to get peachy, right? It can be really easy to hear that. There are a lot of great believers right now who are suffering. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how it works. I'm not preaching the prosperity gospel, right? At some point, life's maybe not is going to get perfect immediately. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. And I think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right before King Nebuchadnezzar is about to throw them into the blazing furnace, they boldly say, "Hey, King, we believe our God is going to save us. But even if he doesn't, he is still God, and he is still worthy of praise." Even if God doesn't do a miracle immediately, he's still God. He's still in control, and there's peace in that, and he's still worthy of praise. So sure, sometimes miracles don't always look like what you expect them to look like. Miracles sometimes are grand and awesome. I have seen instant miracles in my life and in others, and I'm sure you have too. But miracles, not every single time, are going to be a random check for $10,000 in your mailbox, right? Sometimes miracles take years. Sometimes they're little things here and there. Sometimes you don't even notice them. Sometimes they're in the span of 10 years, and then you're able to look back and see the hand of God over your life. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were about to be thrown into the fire, and even they said, if God doesn't save us, we're still at peace because he's in control. Church, let's stand. I want to ask at this point the shepherds and elders to make their way to the front and around the room and be ready for prayer. The question I am asking you today is, what's in your hands? What's in your basket? What are your 5 pieces of bread? And again, I don't know what miracle you need right now. I don't know what weight you're carrying in your hands right now, but I do know what's in Jesus' hands: nail scars, right? And those same hands were able to lift the weight of the world, the sin of the world that was placed on him, and lift him off of him. And he rose 3 days later. He can carry these heavy items. He performed a miracle for 20,000+ people using 5 pieces of bread. So let's stop acting like he doesn't care for us, or he doesn't do miracles anymore, or he's not waiting for us every day to put our faith back into him, because he did it then, and surely he can do it now. And so whatever you can offer him, do it. Don't carry pain that you can't handle when you know the one who can. Sacrificing everything you have can give God the spark to do miraculous things in your life and in others. And again, I'm not saying that life is going to get perfect, but I will say miraculous things can happen when you offer up what you desire and what you struggle with to the Lord, like this little boy did. Little boy came to him in faith. His family probably could have eaten that bread and that fish, right? But he offered it up to Christ.